And this is what it's all about out here. Imagine you're standing in a field and you find a couple cigars with a piece of paper wrapped around it. And you open up that piece of paper and you realize you have the orders of a general officer in your hands from the enemy. That moment, that very moment, could very well change the outcome of this war. And we're going to talk about that on our video here at Antietam. Well, that was a pretty cool trip there to the Dunker Church. I'm going to head back up to the visitor center here and then switch out to the gear I normally use. This gimbal isn't exactly working the way I hoped it would. That Dunker Church back there, seeing stuff like that and being on the ground here and even walking up this hill, this grade here towards the visitor center, looking at those cannons, it really makes you appreciate the struggle and the fight that happened here in Antietam all those years ago in 1862. Had Special Orders 191 not been found, Antietam likely wouldn't have happened. Also, McClellan, he receives a bad reputation after that. And it's not necessarily because he didn't act the way that he should have acted, but more so because he decided to run for president. Political powers at the time decided to go on a smear campaign of General McClellan. And had he not ran as a Democratic nominee against Abraham Lincoln, perhaps this story might have been told a little bit differently with Special Orders 191. So September 1862 rolls around and the Confederate Army crosses over the Potomac. General McClellan has been seeing all kinds of reports coming in from all different locations, from the President of the United States, from people that are in seats of power, and they're telling him all kinds of things, that the Army is crossing over here, the Army is moving over there. You need to reach out and get your forces together to fight and get ready. And the general is confused. He doesn't know what to think. I mean, it sounds like General Lee is all over the place. What in the world's going on? Well, General Lee has actually crossed over that river, and he's headed north. And on September 9th, he decides he's going to reorganize his army. He's going to reorganize them into 3 separate wings. And he's sending Jackson toward Harper's Ferry. And he's got Longstreet up in Hagerstown. And the whole plan is simply just to reach smaller portions of armies and depots and things like that and just attack and essentially bring back as many supplies as you can. Eventually, those wings are going to come back together for a generalized frontal sort of attack. And it's going to cause havoc in the north. It's going to make people want to sue for peace. He doesn't have a plan of really seeking and destroying the entire army of the Potomac. His plan is simply to create havoc and scare the northern population. Also, he wants to pass through Maryland and see if he can get the Marylanders on his side. He wants to recruit more of them because he already has some units of Maryland people doing artillery and things like that. So, September 9th, he writes these orders. And he writes out 7 different copies of these orders. And he sends them out to his officers. All those orders reach the people that they're supposed to reach, except for one person. General D.H. Hill received a copy through Jackson. Lee's headquarters sent Hill a second copy, and he didn't know it. He was not expecting it. Placed in an envelope with 2 cigars, the copy was lost en route. On September 13th, Company F, 27th Indiana Infantry, stacked arms and rested near the Georgetown Pike, just south of Fredericksburg. And a soldier found the envelope, and it soon reached General George B. McClellan. That stacked up cigars and wrapped paper around it turned out to be one of the most valuable pieces of paper that any soldier would find at all during the American Civil War. The evidence doesn't exactly list where this was found, but it suggests that the Best Farm, which is where I'm at right now, might have been where those orders were found. Because those soldiers actually camped out near here, the Confederate soldiers, and they could have lost it out here in the surrounding fields of the Best Farm. And those Union soldiers actually camped out and were on picket guard coming forward, deployed here in this area too. And it could have been found out here in these fields in the surrounding area of the Best Farm. Now this is the small farmstead behind me here. The old farmhouse is still here. They got a couple of cannons out front that I'm pretty sure that those are not real cannons. You can see the old style barns back here and everything. And then across this way, you can still see big, beautiful farm fields that are being farmed today. It's pretty amazing to think that out here, 2 soldiers, probably the luckiest soldiers in the entire bunch, come across this wrapped up piece of paper. And in their minds, they're thinking, wow, how lucky am I? I found a cigar. They didn't even get to smoke the cigars. That's how unlucky they were. And then just a few short days later, one of those men would become a casualty at the Battle of Antietam. It's pretty amazing. But there's a lot of controversy that surrounds this. So I know what you're thinking. Why in the world is it that George B. McClellan is painted out to be the enemy in this situation? And why does it look like George McClellan is dragging his feet and doesn't make a good situation out of these orders that fell into his lap? Well, there's a couple of things that go into this that make it look a little different than what it really is. First, you have to read the orders. Now, the orders that were sent out by Lee wasn't exactly a roadmap to success. Lee didn't literally put on there, we're going to converge our armies at a certain point and crush the Union Army. This wasn't exactly a battle plan. This was a plan for the army to split up, make the most of itself while it could, and then converge together. So it is a wish list, if you will. It's directed at those soldiers, those officers, to move their armies in certain directions. The important part about this is that McClellan, if he acts on it, can actually separate a portion of Lee's army and crush it. He has a big enough force to do so. Also, he knows that Lee's going after Harper's Ferry. He knows that all of these reports that are going on around him about Lee's army being everywhere at once now make sense to him, because Lee's army literally is everywhere at once. It has split up into multiple pieces and it's moving in different directions. He realizes he's got a golden opportunity. Now, why does it seem like McClellan's got such a bad reputation when it comes to this situation? Well, there was a historian by the name of Winton, and Mr. Winton told everyone during the campaign that, I believe it was Winton, it could have been Swinton, but he told everyone during the presidential campaign that McClellan was running for that McClellan drug his feet, essentially. He said that McClellan was dragging the army 6 miles a day when McClellan could have doubled that easily, that McClellan didn't act on it immediately, and that he sat around for half a day waiting, and then the very next day when he sent his army, he wasn't even at the head of his army, that he didn't get there until later in the afternoon, and he hung out over here in Frederick, Maryland. Some of that's true, but a lot of that's not true. For example, McClellan did move his army at a rapid pace. He had portions of his army doing 15 miles a day. Some of them were doing a little bit more than that. Some were doing less. Yes, he could have probably put a little bit more oomph into it, and it didn't help matters that on the 18th of September, after basically working himself into a tie at Antietam, that he really didn't follow that up. But his army was beat down. They had just gone through the single bloodiest day of combat in the history of warfare. And understandably, they needed a break. They had just marched to get there. And they'd been fighting the Confederate Army the entire way. So this is the reason for a lot of this confusion that's going on, and for the bad reputation that McClellan receives after this. And it is repeated again and again and again in history book after history book, because those historians that are writing modern day books are repeating the lies of people that wrote those lies during the 1860s to smear George B. McClellan, essentially. And that's where we get that from. Now here at the Best Farm, this, no pun intended, was McClellan's best chance. The sad part about all of this is 4 to 5 years prior to McClellan's death, he ends up writing in a personal memoir or diary about those special orders. And he writes that he hopes that future generations, future historians will read those orders and understand them the way that he understood them. And that maybe they would know that he did everything that he could within his power possible to fix this situation, and that a lot of it was out of his control, and that he did nothing to drag his feet or to harm his country, because he was a true patriot and he believed in the United States. He loved his country. It really wasn't just a reputation thing with him at that point, and it wasn't just him losing an election at that point. It was him as a man, as a soldier, trying to protect what he was. And he wanted to make sure that future generations understood that he would never do anything to hurt his country or his fellow soldiers. Well, at that point, the rest is history. McClellan's got the orders in his hands. He boasts to Abraham Lincoln his situation. Somehow, the information leaks out to the press. And within just a matter of a few short days, everybody knows that he has special order, according to the press, 119, not 191. And somehow they all know about this. And now he is not only under the pressure of himself and the President of the United States to perform, but he's now under the pressure of these orders being leaked out and the whole world knowing that he has the tool in his hands to do something about it. So they get to Antietam, they have the tie. Lee's army scurries out of there, gets back across that river as quickly as they can because he can't afford to be up there stuck in that situation. And the Confederate Army goes on to fight for another couple of years. McClellan, on the other hand, is teetering on the brink of being relieved of command. And it's just one bad situation after another for him. You have so many people that are pulling against him at that time. And not to mention, it was almost a miracle what happened with those orders. Had he not had those orders, Lee, quite frankly, would have probably feigned an attack on Washington, D.C. or set up a situation to scare the citizens. That's awesome. But he would have been able to do all of that had it not been for McClellan moving on the situation the way that he did. He prevented the Confederate Army from splitting up and conquering and moving up north and creating havoc. He stopped that invasion. For all intents and purposes, he stopped the invasion that was happening in the north. And he prevented Lee from having success up there in Antietam, or anywhere really. I'd say all in all, he did pretty good. Could he have done better? Probably. But I think that all of those historians that repeated the lies that came out of those books probably should have looked at this for themselves and used their own big brains to come up with a full estimate of what happened here. But a lot of people tend to repeat the same stuff over and over again until it becomes the truth. Well, I hope you have enjoyed our small video here from the best farm at Monocacy Battlefield. Until next time, this is History with Waffles.